What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I feel good. I got a new fresh fade,
Yeah, dude, fresh.
so I'm ready to go.
I need a haircut so bad.
Oh, do you? You can't really see between the headphones and the hat, so.
I know, that's why I'm hiding it. I go back and forth. Like, there's times where I just, brush my hand through my hair and it, starts to flow back, and I'm just it feels good. I'm like, maybe I could rock the longer flow. And then there's other times when I see people with a nice fade, I'm like, dude, I just want a nice, fresh fade.
I like the feeling of, the wind on my scalp,
Yeah, it's nice.
and that's what I'm telling myself as my hair's starting to kind of fade fully.
Yeah. Just gradually move yourself towards feeling like you're moving faster, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I feel like I should because I'm trying to run fast. So maybe if I trim my hair.
Aerodynamic, or maybe that's why you need to do a faux hawk.
Remember when faux hawks were the thing?
Yeah, I never had one. Did you?
I probably did.
You were definitely a faux hawk guy.
No frosted tips, though.
I did the frosted tips way back in the day.
That's a crazy
I
thing.
will say.
I wish we had a picture of that.
There's probably one somewhere.
Yeah, if you could find one, that'd be great. I would love to see that. All right, let's get into it. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do that on all podcast platforms. If you aren't following us on Instagram, make sure you head over there at PT Coffee Cast. If you haven't checked out any of our mentorship stuff, you should do that. We have the link in our bio on Instagram. We have our applications open right now for our second cohort, which will be launching in September. We're super stoked to get that going and run some more people through it now that the first one is done. So if you guys are interested in applying there, make sure you do that through the link in our bio on Instagram or in the show notes below. But for today's episode, we're going to dive into the importance of reiterating and constantly communicating the plan to your client and why that's important. And why maybe we might feel like we're talking about the same thing over and over and over again, but as much as we might be driving ourselves crazy, it's probably important that we do it for the client. So maybe, Will, you can kind of lay the groundwork for that, and then we can kind of dive into that discussion and why we think it's important and why we do it a lot.
Yeah, I think...
And we have someone coming in the back door. Hey, Jenna.
Wrong door.
Come on in.
Hi. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, team.
We
So sorry about this.
we
It's
just
good to see you.
we just roll with things here at the PT Coffee Cast. We just adapt.
There we go. Thanks so much.
Yep.
So sorry. So sorry.
No problem.
Hi, fans.
All right. Now back to the importance of laying the groundwork of the plan.
I think you have to think about things from the client's perspective, because from our perspective, I think sometimes we view a lot of the concepts that we go through as really simple, and you're trying to simplify it for your client. So you're explaining to them what they need to do to get better. And to us, it seems very basic. But I think we have to remember that our clients aren't us. Who knows what they've learned throughout their life, but most likely they don't know very much about injury rehab or the human body, with some exceptions, obviously.
It's why they're seeking you.
That's why they need your help.
Yeah.
And but not just that. It's not just some clients do know a little, but it's the context. They're coming to you because something's going wrong. They're probably in pain. They're probably stressed. They're trying to figure out whether what you're saying is going to actually help them. They're trying to figure out whether they can do the financial commitment. They're trying to figure out whether the time commitment is going to work. Can I fit this in my schedule? I've got 3 kids and one's got soccer practice, when am I going to go? Am I going to be able to commit for 3 months of working with this person? What do I want to get out of this experience? In the meantime, they're probably missing something that helps them manage their stress. And so there's this whirlwind of additional things going on cognitively and stress wise, where it makes it even harder to pick up the information, And so when you're giving someone a plan for how you're going to help them get better, it's not enough to just do it once quickly, and it's not enough to do it just verbally without any kind of written thing that they can look at, that they can take home, that they can use to look back on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And it's hard because there's sometimes where you might feel like the client is not engaged with that, or they might be coming across as a little bit, I don't even know the right word, not annoyed, but just you can tell that they're yeah, right. And I feel like a lot of times that reaction is coming from a place of they're not really understanding, or they're not really sure about what's going on. And that's kind of just the natural response to brush it off and kind of be yeah. But in reality, I find that those people, and most people, need to know more and want to see the big picture and the plan more clearly. And even if they're not really open in the moment to it, or seem like they're open to it, once you continue to be consistent with laying that plan out over and over again, and always tying back into everything that you do in your session to that plan and how it's going to move forward, eventually they'll start to come around, and you can start to see it kind of change in how they interact with you. They start asking a bit more questions about, oh, are we doing this movement or this exercise because it helps me get back to running in this realm? They start putting together the pieces. And that really only comes from the consistency of repeating the plan and what you're doing and how it influences that.
And I can't tell you how many times I've brought something up, or I've written it down, and the client's interpretation of it is way off. And if I didn't go into that, I would have never unraveled it. But when they see it and they're oh, that means this, and you're no, it's actually the complete opposite. Yeah. And so it's good to have several times so that you can actually make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah. And
that could be a really important thing, for example, it could be, oh, nerve flossing. That means I'm trying to stretch the nerve. And then they go home and they start stretching it. And you're we very clearly wanted to do anything but that. So I have to put anyone down. I can really understand how you would come to that conclusion, right? So that's why you got to bring it up frequently. And I've found sometimes it doesn't even get really picked up until the second or third session.
Sometimes longer.
Yeah, because they leave and then they
forget about it.
They go about their busy lives.
As they should. They're
not a kinesiologist. So you go home, you're I'm just going to stretch this, and then you're I'm in a lot of pain. Come back, and then we can, you got to bring it up again, right? What's the first step in our plan? We're going to calm it down. This is how we were going to do it. Oh, I was actually doing this, and so I find you have to really repeat it. And it's also better if it's written down so that they can look and be what about this?
Yeah, and I think, we come from a place of being coaches and educators, and we're trying to teach people skills and educate them around what's going on with their body. That stuff just takes time. You're not going to learn something in one day or 1 week or even 1 month. It takes time to wrap your head around these things. And we have such a good grasp on all of it that when we simplify it, we're like, well, why doesn't this make sense to them? But like they'd have no real bearing for what any of that means. And so it's our job to educate. And one way that you do that is like constantly reaffirming certain things or challenging them to answer questions around it, or put them in situations in which you can put together the dots of like what you're trying to tell them or write on the board and what actually happens like in the session. So I think we have to remember that we're educating, and that takes time and it takes like repeatability of the content, And one thing that came to my mind as we're talking about this is I'm kind of going through this right now personally, learning how to swim. So like I'm trying to learn a new skill that I don't have any real bearing on other than like what I learned on YouTube a couple of years ago to teach myself how to float for a triathlon that I did. And now I'm learning from an actual coach who's very knowledgeable. Like he's a former high level swimmer, triathlete, knows everything about swimming. And he's looking at me, a noob that just floats around like a whale, and is trying to teach me how to swim. And so you can see some of those things like happening there as well, where, he's constantly repeating like certain things that I need to do on a weekly basis when I'm in the pool. He's laid out like little goals for me to be moving towards with a bit of a plan as to how we're going to get there. And then he's constantly giving me a little bit of cueing and a little bit of information around those things to not overwhelm me with all of the things that go into swimming, which it's a very technical thing. And he does a really good job as a coach, because I've been able to work with coaches and, being a coach myself, like the way that he does it is really well done. And a big part of what he does is what you're saying. It's like laid out the plan, give me little goals that I'm working towards, giving me cues, but not too much cue or not over feedback, and then constantly reminding me of what I need to be focused on and why we're doing what we're doing and how that's going to relate to me eventually, hopefully becoming a better swimmer.
Yeah, it's a really difficult skill to get the right amount of information. And I think when you really challenge yourself to write down plans and communicate them in, a consistent way, you start to get better at making your stuff concise, like realizing if your thoughts are too scattered, that they're going to show up scattered, and so that ends up ironing and making you deliver your education in a clearer, more concise way, in a way that gives them what they need to know, and not too much.
Yeah, and I think that that's a massive skill as a coach or as a clinician that has such a bearing on outcomes for people, and is like something that we don't really learn the art of coaching, and how to go about those things. And that, in my opinion, is a skill that we should be working on right away as clinicians, and we should be learning how to do that. And it's just something that we're not necessarily taught, and why, I'm so grateful for being in a coaching environment as like a young clinician. Like I learned a lot from like the strength and conditioning world on like how to actually be a coach. And that has like massively impacted my ability to be a clinician, and is one of the reasons why in the mentorship we dive deeper into like focusing on those things, because it's very important for you to grasp that skill. And it's something that you can immediately start implementing and doing without learning any new information about how to assess and how to implement this modality or how to do this treatment technique. It's a matter of how you lay out your sessions, what your words are, how intentional you are with bringing up certain information. What information are you going to offer the client, and what information are you going to withhold, even though it's something that could be helpful to them? It's probably not, maybe it's not the right time. Those are all like skillful things that you can improve on and make a massive difference.
even tailoring the way that you deliver the plan to the person, you know, because like you said, the art of coaching, it's like, well, what does that mean? That means like trying to match the personality of the person in front of you, like their disposition. Like you have some people that are a little more closed off, you know, not as like engaged seeming, versus like the person who's like asking 1,000 questions versus the, you know what I mean? There's all these different types of people, and how you sort of approach giving them the plan is going to be different than someone else.
Yeah, and I really encourage you guys to pay attention to, you know, if you have a coach, or if you're around coaches, or even if you're just in like a different environment, such as like going to like a car mechanic, right? And that you know nothing about. Pay attention to how those people deliver information to you. And you'll start to see people who do a really good job of it. And then you'll start to see people who don't do a good job of it. And there is a massive difference between the two. And then what I would encourage you to do is start to pick up on little things that you're noticing in a good coach, and then pick up on some of the things that aren't so good, and see how you can bring those into your practice and implement them like with your clients.
I'm just thinking about my face at the car mechanic like this.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it's, but then if you go somewhere where there's a good car mechanic, I guess, like,
Yeah, and then it's like this.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's it.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for.
That's exactly what you're looking for. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on that?
I think that was a strong note to end on.
Yeah, I agree. Just to like summarize it all, as clinicians, you know, you hold a lot more knowledge than you think around topics. You've spent a long time learning this stuff, and as much as you feel like you don't know everything, which you don't, but you know a lot more than pretty much everyone that comes through the door, and that's no knock on the individual. That's why they're seeking you out. And oftentimes we think that we're repeating ourselves, or we're talking about a particular topic in a simple way that seems like it's not enough, but for the clients it is, and you would be surprised of how much more you need to like repeat that and make sure you're constantly coming back to how it relates to the plan, how it relates to their goals, and constantly setting that throughout all your sessions. I agree with Will. I don't think we do that enough, and so we need to do that more. And then the other thing would be just the art of coaching and paying attention to people who are doing a really good job at that, and people who aren't, and picking up on some of the good and bad things and trying to bring them into your practice. But that's all we got for today, guys. If you want to learn more about the mentorship, you can check the link in the bio on Instagram, or in the show notes. We're taking applications for our second cohort. We talk a lot about delivering a plan in that mentorship. It's actually probably one of the biggest reasons or the biggest struggles that we've seen with the people that have come through our mentorship is the aspect of delivering the plan. So it's a big part of what we go through in the mentorship. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you check it out. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do that on your podcast platforms. If you guys aren't following us on Instagram, make sure you head over there, follow us at BT Coffeecast. And then if you want some of our free content, we have a couple pieces of content there that you can get in the show notes below. But that's all we got for today, guys. As always, stay caffeinated. Peace.